Well, this next segment may have you taking a much closer look at ingredient labels. Scientist, broadcaster, and author Dr. Chris Van Tulleken joins us from Birmingham, England this morning with more on his new book, Ultra-Processed People: Why We Can't Stop Eating Food That Isn't Food. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning, Annette. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's start off with what is ultra-processed food, because it's much different than processed food.
That's right. So there's a long formal scientific definition, but it boils down to this. If it's wrapped in plastic and it contains an ingredient that you don't normally find in a domestic kitchen, like an emulsifier or a non-nutritive sweetener or a stabilizer or xanthan gum, then it's an ultra-processed food. And this is food we've collected a lot of data on now. Another good definition would be any food that has a health claim on it is probably ultra-processed.
And it's interesting that governments allow these things to happen, the ultra claims like this is fat-free, it's heart healthy. But when you really dig down to what the ingredients are, and if your book surmises that, you know, if you read ingredients that you don't have in your pantry or your cupboards, it's probably ultra-processed.
That's right. And the ingredients are only part of the problem. So there are some anxieties that are quite well founded about some of the additives. The World Health Organization yesterday released a big report on non-nutritive or artificial sweeteners. And we know that some of the emulsifiers can also damage the body and some of the leaching chemicals from the plastics. But the big issue is that these are foods that are engineered to drive excess consumption. So the invitation in my book is really that some readers will notice, and some people watching today will notice, there are foods they find it really hard to stop eating, and I'm one of those people. And if you look at what those foods are, they're generally ultra-processed, and many of us are addicted to these products because they are engineered to be addictive. Right,
and you went on a diet where you ate 80% of ultra-processed foods. For how many weeks?
So I went on a 4-week diet. Now, this, I should say, is not an extreme diet. I wasn't force-feeding myself. This is a very normal diet for many Canadians. For Canadian teenagers and children, many of them eat 80% of their calories from ultra-processed foods. 3 things happened. I gained so much weight that in a month, if I'd continued the diet for a year, I would have doubled my body weight. We also saw that my hormonal responses to meals changed so that my hunger hormones remained sky high at the end of a normal meal. And then we did brain scans. So I'm an academic at University College Hospital in London, and we did brain scans with my colleagues there and saw the automatic behavior bits of my brain were much more connected to the addiction reward bits in the middle of my brain. So this is food. Really, the hypothesis is super simple, Annette. It's basically that if we have food made by transnational food corporations with obligations to generate financialized growth, that food is different to food we make at home. And this is what our parents and our grandparents have said for a long time, but now we have the evidence that shows it's true. And this isn't just one study. You know, with UNICEF are on board with this. I'm an expert advisor to the World Health Organization, and big groups in Canada at McGill, lots of Canadian scientists in the States, and lots of groups in the UK are now saying, no, this is now the leading cause of early death worldwide. Ultra-processed food has overtaken tobacco.
We've got about 30 seconds left. The sad part is, though, is that this food is very affordable. And so a lot of people who are living under the poverty line, that's what they can afford to eat.
The tragedy here is that what we must do is regulate this food without stigma. So this is a problem that disproportionately affects Indigenous communities, low-income families. It's the only affordable available food. And we have to regulate it with real nuance. But that should tell us, when we make regulations, if we have a society that's structured so that people with low incomes can't afford healthy food, that tells us something about the deep violence in our society. And that's really what the book is about. It's a plea for justice.
Okay. I could talk to you for half an hour about this, Chris Van Tulleken. The book is called Ultra-Processed People, Why We Can't Stop Eating Food That Isn't Food, and it's out now. Thank you very much for the time from your very busy shift at the hospital.